You know what real silence is? Not the kind when you turn off the TV and go to bed. Not the nighttime quiet, broken by the hum of the refrigerator or a car passing in the distance. I'm talking about absolute silence. The kind where you start hearing your own blood pulsing in your temples, the vertebrae in your neck cracking when you turn your head. My name is Leo, and for the last 11 years, I've worked as a caretaker at the Stillwater service station. It's not even a town, just a dot on the map in Nevada, lost about 140 miles from the nearest oasis of civilization. My job is to watch over the relay towers and make sure the generators don't stall. And over these 11 years, I've come to understand one terrifying truth. Silence can be aggressive. It can hunt you. It all started 3 weeks ago, on a Tuesday. I had just gotten back from my monthly supply run into town, stocked up on canned goods, enough cigarettes for a month, and bought a fresh pack of earplugs because the old ones had turned into filthy little wads. So, I'm unloading my old Dodge, when suddenly, I noticed something. Right there in the dust, on the grill of the truck, something was caught. I figured it was a branch or a clump of dry weeds snagged on the road. I reach out my hand, and I feel something soft, warm. It was a strand of human hair, dark brown, long. It had been carefully, with some kind of mocking pedantry, woven into the grill, not just tied in a knot, but braided into a tiny little plait. I jerked my hand back, a chill running down my spine. I looked around. The desert, the Mojave. Not a soul for hundreds of miles. Carter, my dog, a big mutt who usually barks at every tumbleweed, was lying under the porch, just quietly whimpering, his tail tucked between his legs. I wrote it off as a stupid prank. Maybe a couple of extreme tourists had wandered by while I was in town, but the uneasiness, as they say, lingered, and as soon as the sun set, the sounds disappeared too. That first night, I was woken up not by a noise, but by the absence of it. Usually the desert sings at night, crickets, the wind, coyotes calling to each other somewhere far off, but in that hour, it was exactly 3:33 in the morning. I remember it because I looked at the clock. There was absolutely nothing. I sat up in bed, and the silence pressed down on me, physically squeezing my eardrums. I swallowed, and the sound of that gulp seemed like an explosion to me. I walked to the window. The windows on the station are dirty, caked with mosquito guts, but that night they were abnormally clean. I looked outside. The light from the emergency floodlight was flooding the concrete pad in front of the generator shed. And you know what I saw? Footprints. Barefoot prints. They ran in a perfectly even line, parallel to my porch, and stopped right at my door. But they were not my prints. These footprints were facing the wrong way. As if someone hadn't walked toward the house, but had walked away from it, backwards, without ever breaking their gaze from me. I lunged for my rifle. My heart was hammering somewhere in my throat. I threw the door open, racked the bolt, ready to scream and shoot, and there was nothing. The footprints vanished about 3 feet from the doorstep. They just ended, as if whoever left them had simply dissolved into thin air or shot straight upward. The floodlight flickered. The next day, I made the mistake every idiot in a horror movie makes. I decided to check the black box. That's my name for an abandoned underground comms bunker about half a mile east. A Cold War relic officially decommissioned 20 years ago. Unused. We caretakers don't go there. It's dangerous. The ceiling supports are rotted out. But the night before, just before sunset, I had picked up a faint motion sensor alert coming from that exact location. I left Carter to guard the house, grabbed my shotgun, and went. I had to walk along the bottom of a dried-up riverbed. And that's when I started noticing a detail that truly terrified me. Every living creature, lizards, snakes, even insects, all of it was lying on the sand. I leaned down next to a rattlesnake, and it's just lying there, belly up. Dead. I go to another lizard. Same thing. They were all dead, but not a single drop of blood, not a single wound. As if someone had simply switched off their sound, and when the sound switched off, so did life. The bunker entrance was slightly ajar. A massive old door weighing half a ton, one you can't move by hand, was open exactly 2 inches. A stream of ice-cold, stale air seeped through the crack. I clicked on my flashlight and climbed inside. It was a kingdom of silence. In there, it was as dense as water. I stopped hearing even my own heartbeat because of how this silence crushed against my ears, causing almost physical pain. The flashlight beam picked out dust hanging in the air, completely motionless. And then I saw it. A hole in the middle of the concrete floor. A perfectly neat, perfectly round hole, its edges melted and glazed over, leading down into darkness. Around the hole, arranged in a circle, stood dolls. You know the type. Old, porcelain, cracked. There were dozens of them. Every single one had its eyes torn out or sewn shut. But their mouths were wide open in a silent scream. And as I stood there, frozen, my gaze fell upon the wall. In uneven, almost childlike handwriting, but carved with unsettling force, words had been scratched into the concrete. Leo, listen. And the moment I read my own name, my flashlight died. Just like that. The batteries were brand new. I sat there in total darkness, and from somewhere deep inside that glassed-over hole, a hole I couldn't see, a sound began to rise, a low, resonant, wet, squelching rhythm. It was not a voice, not an animal. It sounded most like a gigantic, wet heart pumping blood, and footsteps, slow, heavy, ascending a staircase that I knew for a fact did not exist down there. I ran, stumbling, skinning my elbows and knees against the concrete, navigating only by the sliver of moonlight through the gap in the door. I squeezed through the crack, tearing my jacket on the rusted metal, and I ran all the way back to the station without looking back. When I burst into the station, Carter greeted me with a piercing whine. He was spinning in circles, foam coming from his mouth, staring into the corner of my bedroom. I grabbed my dog by the collar and locked us both in the equipment room, surrounding myself with walls of humming servers and generators. Only white noise could save me. The third and final night had come. The station lost contact with dispatch in Las Vegas. I tried calling for help on the emergency channel, but all I got back was static. And then, from within the white noise of the interference, I heard my name. Leo. Not spoken, but as if it had been spliced together from pieces of different radio broadcasts, from hissing, from whistling. It was right on the edge of perception, but it was there. I huddled in the corner of the equipment room, clutching Carter, who was now growling. My rifle lay across my knees. At 3 a.m, the power began to glitch. The lights flickered, and then came the silence. This time, absolute. Even the generators cut out. And in that void, a sound appeared. The sound of claws or fingernails, lightly, curiously scratching against the metal door of the equipment room from the other side. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Slow, methodical. Carter stopped growling. He just lay down on the floor, covered his snout with his paws, and went still. And that's when I understood the horrible truth. It wasn't trying to get in. It couldn't open the door at all. It didn't need to open the door. It was playing with me. It was scratching in the exact rhythm of my own heartbeat, which I could hear pounding inside me like an alarm bell. And then a voice, a whisper, accentless, in perfect English, sounded right next to my ear, even though I was alone in the room. My hearing picked up the vibration directly in the bones of my skull. "You came back from the bunker, Leo," it rustled. "Now the sound is inside you." I looked down. My right hand, resting against the concrete floor, was perfectly still. But the fingernails were worn down to blood, the exact same scratches I'd seen on the door. I stared at my hand and slowly realized what was scratching on the other side was not a monster trying to get in. It was the echo of my own terror, outpacing me by a split second. The silence eats a person from the inside out, taking the mind first, then the physical form. And now, I am a carrier. Right now, I'm sitting in a motel on the outskirts of Vegas. All around me, cars are honking, drunk people are shouting, neon signs are buzzing. I've turned on the TV, the radio, the shower, everything at full volume, trying to drown out the silence. But it's not helping. Carter won't look at me anymore. His heart stopped the next morning while he was sleeping at my feet. It just stopped beating. You know why I'm recording this video? It's not a cry for help. It's an instruction. If you ever find yourself alone, in a place where the desert noise suddenly cuts out, and if you see footprints in the sand leading to nowhere, do not follow them. And for the love of all that is holy, if you hear a silence that sounds louder than any scream, run. Run to where there are people, chaos, life, because if you stop, and if you listen closely, it will begin scratching at your door.